Okay, what's going on, everyone? So recently I just watched a movie. I'm sure you've heard of it, Dune Part Two. It's been a couple days since I watched it, and I've been kind of putting my thoughts together and gathering my thoughts. And so I just kind of wanted to come on here and talk about it, and honestly just give like a Christian's perspective on Dune Part Two, because I think this is important to do. To give Christ-based perspectives on stuff like this, and so that's just kind of my ideas to come on here real quick, not make it too long, not rant too much, but just give a quick little summary and my thoughts based on, my beliefs. I just want to get straight into it, and first of all say that I really like the first movie. I've read the book too. I've read a few of the books. I've read, I think, up until book 4. 2 through 4, I haven't necessarily fully read, but I have read and get the gist of what happens and goes on. So I really do like specifically the first book. I think I know that a lot of Christians really give the books and the movie flack for kind of being about this whole Messiah sort of thing, because if you don't know, the whole point of the first Dune book and really the second one and kind of the third one is that the main character, Paul Atreides, is basically the Messiah, the savior to these Arrakis locals named the Fremen. And if you're watching this video, I'm sure you probably know that. But honestly, as someone who really tries really hard to grasp the message of the book and the movie, I actually think that it's kind of pro-Christian almost. Because in a way, I think if you really analyze the meaning of the book and even the second movie that I just watched, the whole point is that Paul is this really a false Messiah and a false savior and a false prophet, as he kind of admits himself at one point in the movie to these people, and he's never painted out to be the good guy. And I think that's where a lot of people in the Christian community get confused, is they think, oh, they're trying to push this because the main character is this Messiah and he's false. But he's never made out to be a good guy. It's very clear in the books, specifically in the books, that Paul's kind of a loser. And if anything, I think that as Christians we can take out of this, it's sort of a warning about false prophets and the danger of incorporating religion into the political scene in order to twist and manipulate people into following and supporting somebody, which, I'll be honest, I think in the real world we see a lot, and a lot of people don't even realize it. And so I think that this is almost like an antichrist sort of story, like a warning of false prophets and wolves in sheep's clothing. If you go into this movie with that perspective, then I think you can actually get a lot out of it. Now, with this movie, one thing that you have to note about both of these movies is they are a little bit strange. Part 1, not as much as this one, as far as sort of violence and sort of odd things go. Violence never really gets me too much. In Dune Part 2, though, I think that specifically with the villain Fade Rotha, I think there is a little bit of unnecessary and excessive violence, maybe. There are a couple scenes where he will literally just stab somebody to death for funsies. And I get that the point that they're trying to get across is that he's a psychopath, and I totally do get that, but I kind of get it, it's he's just killing people, and I'm I get that he's crazy. This isn't really adding anything to the story. It's kind of unnecessary. And it's just the whole feel of, specifically with Giedi Prime, which is the planet of the Harkonnens, it's a very cultish kind of feel, and there are certain scenes where I was bothered, and I was yeah, this is a little bit weird. But overall, I get really mixed with stuff like this, because I'm yeah, this is really odd, but isn't that kind of the point? Because they're villains, and so villains are odd and evil, and making the villains look odd and evil kind of, I feel adds to the point. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about on that. There are some odd things, specifically with like religion, and then just like some violence, and like there's one scene that's sort of suggestive, not really, but it's basically a Bene Gesserit who's seducing Austin Butler's character, Fade Rotha. And so I can see where some people who like are, who care a lot about that stuff may not want to watch it. And some things did bother me a little bit. I was like, yeah, I don't know about all that. But overall, that's just something that it's a personal thing. I think it's a personal thing. With all that aside, I do kind of want to talk about, like, as a filmmaker, my critiques about the movie as a movie. As somebody who's read the entire Dune book, I really liked the second half. I think that the second half is probably my favorite. And the problem with this movie, and I think there's really no way to avoid it, is that book is just full of stuff. Like, full of content, and it's just really hard to adapt. And I really do have to give props to Denis Villeneuve for properly adapting this film to the best of his ability. But you can kind of tell that they had a lot to do and not time to really do all of it. And it does impact the film a little bit. I feel like the first I'll say the first half of the film kind of doesn't do enough. And then after the halfway point, you can kind of tell that they're really rushing to get everything else done and put everything else in there. Specifically with the character development of Paul, I feel like the first half of the movie, Paul is like just kind of in this wrestle between like, should I do this, should I not? And it's almost like they don't give us enough development with that in the first half, to where in the second half it's like, okay, we got to get this done, so let's just rush through this. And it kind of just felt a little bit to me, like I could tell. And some scenes were just like, and I get that like the part in the book where Paul goes and drinks the water of life and then like goes into a coma for a week, like that's really, it's a weird thing to adapt. And there's a lot of things like that in the book where it's just a weird thing to adapt on the screen. I think for the most part, they did the best job that they could with doing that. But I do also think that the third act was a little bit lackluster, maybe a little bit, because it's like before the climax, it's kind of like they had a lot to put in there, so they just throw together a little montage and then throw us into the climax. And even the climax itself is kind of like, I don't want to say anticlimactic, because I thought that everything in the throne room was really cool. Like the knife battle between Paul and Fade Rotha was awesome. Like that is one of the best hand-to-hand combat scenes I've ever seen in a movie, undoubtedly. But I do feel like that there was just the problem overall with the movie is just there's so much that they had to pack in there that it makes the movie feel a little bit crowded. And that it was really unavoidable. And so I will be gracious to them and be like, I will give them credit because they did a very good job, I think, with, what they were given. And so that's kind of my critiques as like an actual film. But as far as like from a Christian's perspective on the movie, like would I recommend this to other people? It really just depends on it's really just a personal thing, I think. I think that you definitely can go into this movie and get something good out of it if that's the mindset that you're going in with. If you're going in with the mindset of like, they're trying to push something on me, then you might as well just don't go see the movie. But like, if you are going into this and being like, okay, I'm going to take this as like, basically a warning against, false prophets, wolves in sheep's clothing, then I think you can really get something out of this. But if you're kind of iffy about like dark stuff and like violence, and I probably wouldn't recommend it because it's quite a dark film in certain parts, specifically with the Harkonnens on Gidi Prom. But all in all, that's like my full thoughts on the film. I liked it. I gave it like a 7.8 out of 10. I do prefer Dune Part 1, I'm going to be honest. But I think as a collective story with Part 1 and 2 together, it's good. It's good. And honestly, I don't really know if I'll tune in for Dune Messiah, and then the books after that if they end up adapting those. But and yeah, that's really all I got. I just wanted to hop on here and kind of share my thoughts because I've been internalizing them and really thinking about them for the last 2 days. So yeah, if you've watched the movie, let me know what you think, because I've seen a lot of people say it's the best thing ever. I've seen a lot of people saying it sucks. What do you think?